Kirby Smart and this Georgia football staff brought in what was a school record 10 transfers between the winter portal window and the most recent spring one. Kirby and his staff went after 10 guys, brought them in, and I think that around 5 to 6 of them are going to be legitimate contributors. I think a handful of them are going to be starters for this 2025 Georgia football team. It's a new day and age of college football, and this is just the reality. And Georgia, if it wants to succeed, has to dip into the transfer portal too. ESPN named 3 of these guys as top 100 transfers in this transfer portal window. The fact that there's hundreds of players out there that they can even rank is kind of astonishing when you just think about where college football is at. But 3 now Georgia Bulldogs, former players of other teams, but now Georgia Bulldogs, made ESPN's top 100. One of them for Georgia made the top 10. Another one was a top 50 guy, and then another one was right outside of the top 50. So let's jump into the list. Let's see what ESPN has to say about the transfer portal guys, and I'll give you what I have to say, and obviously the proper context and background. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post. Links are down below, and what's most important is that you go to dawgpost.com. Make sure you are checking out our website, dawgpost.com. You can find, oftentimes there are written versions of the videos that we're talking about, or there's insider stuff. Dawgpost.com. I'm not even asking you to subscribe. I'm not even asking for that, but make sure you're checking out our newsletter and make sure you are checking out our website over at Dawg Post. Okay. Coming in at number 8 on ESPN's list, and Georgia's highest rated transfer, if you ask pretty much every website, and specifically the one we were looking at, ESPN, is the wide receiver Zachariah Branch. Hailing in from USC. Georgia had what many people would say is a wide receiver issue this past season, right? Led the country in drops, that group did, with about 36 of them. They kind of lacked an elite playmaker, right? When Lad McConkey and Brock Bowers are out the door to the NFL, Georgia just didn't have enough to replace that type of talent and production. So what do? They go after Zachariah Branch in the transfer portal. Zachariah Branch is a former 5-star prospect. Depending on the outlet you ask or look at, he was the number 1 wide receiver in the 2023 high school recruiting class. He was a first-team All-American freshman, first-team All-American in 2023. And he is a kick returner. And he's pretty good at doing that. And I think that part of why I would consider Zachariah Branch to be Georgia's biggest impact transfer is because you're not just bringing him in to be a wide receiver, you're also bringing him in to help with the return game, and I think we saw that immediately at G-Day. He's Georgia's primary kick returner, and he's pretty good at doing that. He took both a kickoff and a punt back for a touchdown in his true freshman season at USC. He played with Caleb Williams, right, a former Heisman winner and a former number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. Played with Miller Moss and Jaden Mayava, but he is a dynamic playmaker. He brings an element to the table that Georgia didn't really have. Now, they had Arian Smith. They had the speed. They had some shiftiness with Dominic Lovett. But those guys were missing other pieces. I think kind of Branch is kind of a mold of those players. And he, at the very least, if he's not Georgia's wide receiver 1, if he's not this dominant player, I think he's going to be an important X-factor type of weapon in this Georgia offense. And another thing to note, why is that important for Georgia to have this coming season? It's important to have really good pass catchers and really good offensive weapons in general. That's just kind of a rule of thumb if you want to be good on offense. But there's a quarterback transition. This isn't Carson Beck. This isn't the future first-round pick. I don't know if that's on the table for Beck anymore, but it was at one point. This isn't like a future first-round pick and NFL arm talent necessarily. Gunner's very talented. I don't know if he's quite that talented in terms of the arm. He doesn't have a ton of experience under his belt. Things are not going to be easy all the time, and I expect there to be some bumps in the road. Having playmakers like Zachariah Branch make Gunner Stockton or Ryan Puglisi's life easier in this offense. This is what ESPN had to say about him. He lived up to the 5-star hype right away, earning those All-America honors, getting all those touches, blah, blah, blah. What he brings to Georgia. Branch is a big-time upgrade for Georgia's offense. that must replace leading receivers Arian Smith and Dominic Lovett. The Bulldogs led all FBS teams with 36 receiver drops last season, according to ESPN's research, and will need Branch to be a reliable difference maker for new starting quarterback Gunnar Stockton. I didn't read this. I haven't read these blurbs yet. This is an echo of what I just told you. They're saying they've got more to say. They think he's a great yard after catch target. They think he's a big play weapon in the screen game, that his speed has obviously transferred at the collegiate level. All of those things are true of Zachariah Branch. And he comes at number 8 on ESPN's list, right? If we look at the top 10, these are who ESPN thinks. John Mateer, the quarterback going from Washington State to Oklahoma. Carson Beck from Georgia, Miami. Darian Mensah from Tulane to Duke. Fernando Mendoza from Cal to Indiana. These are all quarterbacks so far. Nico Iamaleava from Tennessee to UCLA. The first non-quarterback is Eric Singleton, the wide receiver from Georgia Tech, made a ton of plays against the Dogs last year. He's transferring to Georgia. So those are types of players ranked ahead of Branch, but still one of the highest rated players in this transfer portal cycle. Next on the list for Georgia is the edge rusher, the outside linebacker, Elo Madozi from Army. He came in at number 34 on this list. Not the first edge rusher, right? He's actually ranked right behind Bo Atkinson, another guy that the Dogs were in the mix, a defensive end from North Carolina. He ranks right behind Bo Atkinson. But Elo Madozi, what is another problem that the staff obviously identified and is kind of obvious to all of us? Georgia lacks edge rusher talent, right? Maybe not lack edge rusher talent, but they lack edge rusher experience. They lack sack production heading into this season. Georgia lost Jalen Walker. That's 6.5 sacks. Georgia lost Chaz Chambliss. That's 6.5 sacks. Michael Williams brings 5 sacks with him. Damon Wilson brings his 3 sacks to Missouri in the transfer portal. They lost other defensive line talent. Gabe Harris was injured, who's projected to be Georgia's number 1 edge rusher, the upcoming junior. He was injured. So they go into the transfer portal and they get one of the best edge rushers in it, and they get Elo Madozi, another guy who I think in terms of this order, especially for Georgia, I think ESPN got it right. Elo Madozi is right there with Zachariah Branch in terms of importance and I think impact type of player for Georgia this coming season. I think he's arguably an instant starter. I think him and Gabe Harris will probably be your main outside linebacker duo. Now, Georgia does have Quintavious Johnson that played a little bit of garbage time last year as a true freshman. And they have Chris Jones, who's going to be a redshirt freshman this year, another highly ranked recruit who can kind of play inside-outside linebacker but projects more as an outside guy. Quintavious Johnson and Chris Jones were the starting linebackers during spring football this over the past few months because of Gabe Harris's injury and not having another guy. Well, Madozi comes in, 6.5 sacks, and also led Army in tackles for loss last season. He's a guy who has more production than anyone on Georgia's roster in terms of an edge rusher already. This is what ESPN had to say about him. He was also in the spring transfer portal window, right? So we didn't get to see him during the spring. Not like Zachariah Branch, who we saw at G-Day and we saw as a winter transfer portal, along with the next guy I'm going to talk about. This is what ESPN had to say about Madozi. The Bulldogs moved quickly to lock up one of the more intriguing edge rusher defenders in the spring portal. Adapting to playing at the SEC level can take some time for transfer entering this conference, but the fact that Madozi has 2 seasons of eligibility remaining gives him plenty of time to develop into a difference maker. That's what they had to say of the former Army Black Knight. Now, the last Georgia Bulldog on this list, and a guy who I definitely think makes an impact, they've got him ranked behind a bunch of other wide receivers, including guys like Kevin Concepcion, Nick Anderson, right? Zachariah Branch, Reggie Virgil, right? There's a ton of wide receivers on this list. But coming in at number 53 overall and third for Georgia, and Georgia's last guy, is Noah Thomas. He's coming from Texas A&M. This is a guy that's about 6'5", 6'6", 200 pounds. He provides Georgia another jump ball, go up and get it, big X receiver on the outside. Georgia lacked that last season. Why? Ra Thomas gets kicked off the team before the season even started. He was projected to be a starter. Colby Young, the transfer they brought in from Miami a year ago, he plays a few games. He shows some promise as a guy that can do that for Georgia, and then he gets suspended from the team, off the field issues. So then all of a sudden, Georgia doesn't really have a big go up and go get it guy on the outside. Well, Colby Young's coming back, and he's going to be in the mix. And now they brought in Noah Thomas, like projected ahead of 2025 now, or ahead of 2024. Now you project Georgia to have two of those types of players. He was Texas A&M's leading receiver last year with what I considered to be kind of a shaky quarterback situation. Connor Wigman, right? Played his way out of the job. Marcel Reed takes over, and that was a run-first offense with Marcel Reed running option offense. Well, Noah Thomas, I think he's smoother than you'd think for his size, and I think he provides another body and, for another first-year starter quarterback, a good weapon to have. This is what ESPN had to say about Noah Thomas, and then we'll wrap this video up. The Bulldogs really lacked a big-bodied receiver for their passing attack after Miami transfer Kobe Young was suspended during the season, so Thomas certainly resolves that need and gets Georgia up to have one of the SEC's best receiver trios with Branch Thomas and Dylan Bell. I think it's funny that I wasn't reading these things before. I wanted to be notified when y'all were in terms of me reading it. They're pretty much echoing what I have to say. And yes, I do think all of a sudden Georgia's wide receiver room, when you add Branch and Thomas, looks better. And of course, El Mendoza, I think, is probably an instant starter for Georgia coming out of the transfer portal along with the pass catchers. ESPN has spoken about Georgia's transfers. Let us know what you think in the comments down below, and I appreciate you for watching.